Awesome. Randy, Josh, Dr. Langer, thank you so much. My name is Michael Wright. I'm the Vice President of Diversity and Health Equity for Northwell, and we're absolutely delighted to be with you all today to talk about something that's really near and dear to our heart. It's critical to our mission. This is a joint, a team effort, and so I'm going to introduce my colleagues as we go along. But we've been on this journey for the last 10 years in really formalizing, embedding our approach to diversity, inclusion, health equity in all that we do for our health system, for our team members, for our patients and communities. And this is so impactful in improving and ensuring quality health outcomes for our patients across the very diverse communities that we serve. We've got a lot of lessons learned along the way, and we're excited to spend this time with you. I'm going to moderate as we go along. I'm going to encourage you to engage in chat, post your questions, your comments, your experiences. We'll call some of those things out as we go along, but we want to make this as interactive as possible. And I know you all do this really well when you get together, and so I'm excited about having a really robust conversation. We gave you some pre-work. Wouldn't be a little bit of an assignment coming into this this webinar, and so my hope is you had a chance to think about implications of diversity, inclusion, health equity on healthcare, maybe some of your own experiences in this space, as well as had a chance to look at the two TED Talk videos, or one TED Talk and a video on conscious bias. We're going to spend a little bit of time just kind of unpacking those and getting your perspectives, insights, ahas potentially from those videos. But I'm going to move us along here. So in terms of our time together, Dr. Merez, I'm going to introduce momentarily. We'll kind of set some context, give us some background on our strategy around diversity, inclusion, health equity at Northwell. We'll tie that to a little bit of the pre-work that you all did coming into this session. We're going to deep dive on two topics of unconscious bias and microaggressions and look to get your own experiences on that. And then talk about how this all plays out in our workforce diversity inclusion strategy in particular, and end with a call to action. Again, reminder, post to the chat your comments, perspectives, insights, experiences. We'll call that out as we go along. I'm excited to introduce Dr. Jennifer Merez. She is our Senior Vice President, first Chief Diversity Officer for Northwell Health, and Associate Dean of Faculty Affairs at the Zucker School of Medicine at Hofstra, and has really been the leader of setting the strategy for diversity, inclusion, health equity at Northwell. And really been, I've been partnering with Jennifer for the last 3 years, have learned a lot from Jennifer over the last 3 years, and just delighted to be, partnering with her on this journey towards health equity. One of the things that we did a couple years ago, video plays a big role in how we convey the messages around diversity, inclusion, health equity. And so based on a video that Accenture put out many years ago, I think a couple years ago now, Jennifer, they had a video that was entitled "Inclusion Starts with I," and we took that video and kind of made it our own in the context of health equity. And so we thought we would start with this because it's a good foundation in terms of how we view diversity, inclusion, and health equity at Northwell. So let's take a look. that, I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Merez to set some context for us and talk a little bit about the journey we've been on.
Sure.
This is high tech moving around here.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Michael, thank you for that kind introduction. Thanks to Dr. Langer and the entire team for including us. And what I'd like to do in the next 10 minutes share with you what we have done at Northwell Health in terms of diversity, inclusion, and health equity. So in 2010, and I've had the honor and privilege since 2010 to be the Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer at Northwell. I'm a cardiologist, practiced for 22 years or so, and came back to Northwell from NYU to take on this role, to focus and expand my interests and research on gender disparities in cardiovascular disease to now look at how we can journey to health equity. And it's truly been an honor and privilege to have this role and to work with an amazing team. So what happened in 2010 as a country? We, for the first time, issued guidelines from the Joint Commission, as well as 1 year later, the first ever National Prevention Strategy was published by Dr. Regina Benjamin, then Surgeon General, to say that in the United States, we needed to shift our efforts from acute care to focus on prevention. And when you think of prevention with the goal of making sure that every single American has access to healthcare and can have opportunities to lead a healthy life, the guidelines were published, the prevention strategy guidelines, and you can see here. And it was felt that it was coming at a time where healthcare delivery needed to expand to include factors such as one's culture, one's language, to really enhance patient outcomes and improve outcomes. So this was coming at the time of a national push. And at Northwell, we formalized our approach to diversity, inclusion, health literacy, and health equity in 2010. An expanded healthcare delivery was felt necessary to deal with the epidemic of chronic diseases, and that includes things like hypertension, diabetes, heart disease, cancer, where we as individuals all have to have an active role in once we leave the medical encounter in caring for our health. So Northwell's approach to diversity and inclusion and health equity, it came in 2010. We formalized our approach to diversity, health equity, and you could see here we had a compelling case. We had grown from probably 2 hospitals, then quickly to 9, to now 23. And if you look at the population served, you can see here based on languages, if we use preferred language as a surrogate for diversity, that close to 50% of our patients treated spoke a language other than English. And you could see here truly the changing demographics of the population served by Northwell Health. This changing demographic required that we expanded and refine our healthcare delivery model where we can truly partner with our patients to meet their healthcare needs. And so we formalized our approach. We established the Office of Diversity, Inclusion, and Health Literacy. We quickly expanded in 2017 to include health equity. And it also came at a time where we made a public commitment with the American Hospital Association on the journey to equity. So we established the Center for Equity of Care in the last few years, and you can see here our mission to advance the delivery of culturally inclusive healthcare, effective communication, importantly in partnership with our communities to achieve health equity. And our goals to address racial, ethnic, sex, and gender disparities, be a trusted partner by fostering a culture of inclusion, and empower all people to be partners in their healthcare management, truly changing sort of the paradigm, the healthcare delivery paradigm, where we started to see and work with everyone and our patients and communities as partners. And we intend to implement an expanded model of healthcare delivery through parameters of health literacy, education, culture, and linguistic competency, with a strong belief that this was the recipe to really getting to health equity and eliminating health disparities. Here you can see our setup. We have these 6 pillars that inform our strategy. This is our roadmap. Leadership commitment. We have a committee chaired by our CEO, Michael Dowling, COO, Mark Solazzo, and Dean Smith. Are leaders of our leadership committee. We report directly to the Board of Trustees. We focus a lot on educating our 72,000 employees to link diversity, inclusion, health equity with improving patient outcomes. And you will hear from Dr. Penny Stern later on unconscious bias. We partner with our communities. Our workforce is intimately involved. We have our employee resource groups that help guide our strategy as how we truly partner with our patients in a culturally and linguistically sensitive way to improve care. Supply diversity. We work with our small businesses, minority-owned businesses and women-owned businesses, LGBTQ businesses, to give them access to be a partner at Northwell Health. And working with Dr. Stacy Rosen and the Katz Institute, we focus on gender disparities and an expanded view to women's health. What you see here is sort of a schematic of our plan. And you see we have aligned our strategy with the US prevention guidelines. You can look at the cogs here and you can see that the community lays the foundation for every single thing we do in healthcare delivery. And understanding and partnering with our community is of critical importance if we are to get to health equity, if we are to indeed eliminate health disparities. And you see all the different cogs that all work together. A focus on health literacy, and that is effective communication, how we communicate with our patients, truly important. The tenets of diversity and inclusion, where we incorporate the mosaic, and we think of diversity as race, ethnicity, lifestyle, gender preferences, work preferences, age differences, from Gen Zs all the way onward. We feel that incorporating the tenets of humanism, where everybody is treated with dignity and respect, is of critical importance, where every voice can be heard. And cultural competency, understanding one's beliefs about health, their cultural beliefs, and honoring those truly important. As we move into research, we have to expand our research, inclusion, parameters to include patients and people of all different ethnicities and different religious beliefs into our research so we can truly customize care to improve health outcomes. Professional education, continuing to educate and expand curriculums where health equity is definitely included in our nursing curriculums or medical school curriculums or PA and other allied health professionals. And our governance, working to make sure that our Board of Trustees and our governance understands and reflects the communities we serve. And of course, in our healthcare patient delivery, making sure that we communicate effectively and honor one's cultural beliefs. And this, as you can see here, is aligned with the 4 components of the US prevention guidelines published in 2011, that people need to be empowered to be partners in their care, that we need to have, and health systems need to have, a focused approach on the elimination of disparities, because with a focused and intentional approach, they can be eliminated, and focus on the community, the partnership with communities for healthy and safe communities, and then implementation of preventive measures into the community, such as screening for, mammographies, colon cancer screening. So these 4 components will ensure that every American has access to healthcare and can live a long and healthy life. So as you think of patient care and you're thinking, why does diversity come into all of this? Why is this necessary for 21st century healthcare delivery? We know from our population health experts that if we look at total health, that we in healthcare, in the medical encounter, we sort of account for 20% of health outcomes. So you could see this here. But once after the patient or the medical encounter, and you go back into your normal daily activities, that 80%, roughly 80%, 30% from health behaviors, 10% from your environment, whether you have access to healthy foods and you could follow a treatment plan, and then socioeconomic factors, education, job status, all of these factors impact outcomes. So if you have, and I always say, your health is your most important asset. But if you have, say, something like heart disease, and you need to, you've seen your physician, maybe you've had a stent placed, as many of the patients I treated, and then there's a long list of things that you need to do to continue to stay healthy and stay out from the cath lab, which is where we put stents in. And you could see that all of these factors here will depend on, do you understand what type of medications? Do you have access to healthy fruit and vegetables? Do you understand how we're going to take, what you need to do to take your medication? So all of these factors play a role, and therefore we must expand our healthcare delivery model to incorporate the culture, the language, and the social determinants of health. And so as we are on this journey to expanding our healthcare delivery, we have adapted parameters from this model published by a group in Montreal, issuing a call to action for the medical community to move from the paternalistic approach of healthcare delivery, where you saw your doctor, he or she told you what to do. We have moved to patient-centered care, but the patient is still in the middle, not really having a voice. And the group has suggested that the most effective way is that we see our patients as partners, and that if you are a partner in your health, we can customize and structure the treatment plan to better meet your needs, to meet our patients exactly where they are, be it from a language perspective, or whether it's access to drugs and pharmaceuticals that will treat chronic conditions, or access to healthy foods. So it's a work in progress, but we have adopted the patient as a partner approach because we know that 80% of outcomes depend on everything other than the medical encounter. So as you think about this, we also know, and this is from a publication from the Mayo Clinic, that when we look at what are the barriers to this sort of customized approach to treatment strategies, where do we as individuals sort of falter? What are the barriers to help from preventing us from adhering to our treatment strategies, whether it's customized or otherwise? And you can see here 3 important components. There are factors that are patient-related. So I've seen Mr. Jones, he has diabetes. I say to Mr. Jones, you need to exercise, you need to lose a little bit of weight, you need to definitely take your medications twice a day, come back and see me in 3 months, here's what you need to do, here are the dietary changes. There are factors that are patient-related that if I do not incorporate, whether Mr. Jones' preferred language, the language he speaks at home is English, or it could be something else, how we communicate, does he really understand what needs to be done? We could definitely not have the desired outcomes. And so things like health literacy, language other than English, cultural beliefs, how we give medications, access to medication side effects need to be incorporated into the treatment plan. There are other factors that are medical team related that can lead to problems with sticking to the treatment plan. And here, things like how we communicate and unconscious biases, and you'll hear from Dr. Penny Stern about this. And then there are other factors related to the institutions, office visit times, limited access to care, and things such as institutional racism. So we continue on this journey. We have signed publicly the American Hospital Association's pledge with about 1,200 other health systems across the United States. We have to give metrics. We have to report yearly on our progress. And this is all done in partnership with our communities and our entire Northwell team. And you could see here the 4 aspects of the pledge: increased collection and use of race, ethnicity, and language. We need to understand the makeup of our community. You go back to the COGS and then use that data to make sure we are complying and really giving access to all our community members. Increase cultural competency training for the workforce, because we need to link culture, diversity, inclusion, health equity, with improving health outcomes, increase diversity in governance and leadership so that our governance or trustees or leadership reflects the communities we serve, and definitely improve and advance community partnerships. And we have been definitely working on community partnerships. You can see here, it's a work in progress, but we have partnered with faith-based organizations to enhance their knowledge about heart disease. We have used our book, Heart Smart for Women, Dr. Penny Stern, Dr. Stacy Rosen, to reach communities on the components, the 6-week steps. 6 steps to heart healthy living in 6 weeks. And you can see here in terms of our continuous effort for education of our 72,000 employees that we continue to educate in terms of language access, cultural competency, health literacy, and importantly, the effects of unconscious bias on having communities and people not be able to adhere to treatment strategies. And so, turning you back over to Dr. Michael Wright. Thank you very much for your attention, and we'll continue the dialogue. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Perez. And so, presented a high-level overview of the journey that we've been on, and hopefully you're taking away kind of the impact of language, culture, health literacy on our ability to improve health outcomes for our patients and for the communities that we serve. Coming into this session, we asked you to be thinking about and doing some reflection on topics like unconscious bias and microaggressions. And so hopefully you had a chance to take a look at the 2 videos that we sent you, be thinking about the impacts of diversity, inclusion, even health equity in your own lives and in your own communities. And so, you know, clearly I'm going to introduce Dr. Penny Stern momentarily, but unconscious bias does play a big role in health outcomes because it can impact the decisions that have impacts on health outcomes for our patients, and we'll unpack that a little bit more. But microaggressions, we've all experienced microaggressions. We've probably all contributed to microaggressions in some way, right? And if you had a chance to listen to Tiffany Alvoyd, she talks about how microaggressions are insults rooted in stereotypes, right? That limits a person's ability to see people as individuals, and very prevalent in our society, but often impact marginalized communities. And you can begin to think about how this might translate in a healthcare environment, particularly impact healthcare decisions and health outcomes for our patients. She provides a few examples of microaggressions, but then at the end, she basically says, here's what you need to be thinking about. Hit the pause button. And I know Penny's going to talk a little bit about this as well. Before you say something, think to yourself, what's the impact of what you're about to say on others, right? How are you going to show up for others? Is this comment really necessary? Is it going to promote a growth mindset? You know, do your research first, right? And ultimately, she comes back to the point, this is all about inclusion, as Dr. Perez said. It's about dignity and respect. It's about human decency, right? It's about showing kindness and treating people like we want to be treated ourselves. And so that's what our journey has been on over the last 10 years here at Northwell. It directly connects to our mission and so important to health outcomes, improving the health outcomes and ensuring quality health outcomes for all of our patients that we serve and the communities that we serve. So with that, I want us to deep dive a little bit more. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Penny Stern, who's Assistant Vice President of Preventative Medicine. And we're delighted to have her here with us. She's a guru in the unconscious bias space. And so without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Penny. And I know she's going to share her slides, so I think I have to stop sharing, right, Penny?
Yes.
Okay, see that.
Can everybody see the slide?
Yeah, we can see it.
Great. Okay. So good morning, everybody, and thank you for being here. As you heard from Dr. Merez and Dr. Wright, before unconscious bias and microaggressions became issues in the national spotlight, Northwell Health made it a priority to address bias and unconscious bias. So for over 5 years, I've been facilitating trainings like this one throughout our health system. But this is only an introduction, and it's meant to really whet your appetites for learning more about these important topics. So I have a video that I hope will work, and if it doesn't, I will go out and come back. If you could let me know whether you hear this, that would be great. Did you hear that?
Yeah.
Okay. So this video was taken from an actual series of experiments in Belgium where researchers wanted to see how people would react in this situation as presented here. So if anybody would like to, in the chat, indicate how you felt when you watched this, what did you see going on here? That would be great. I hope you all have your chats open. Michael, are you going to share the chats with me?
Yes, I will. Yes. So feel free, everyone, to just comment. People judging those men based on their appearances. I saw fear, lots of assumptions, stereotypes. People didn't want to sit near the men with tattoos.
So you should know that the men in the audience were told by the people running the experiment to look as threatening and dangerous as possible. They were basically setting up the people who were going to come into the room. And what was going on here was clearly bias, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So when it comes to the words bias and unconscious bias, what comes to mind? You can put responses in the chat box. Words like judgment or stereotype or prejudice, assumptions, preconceived ideas. We know that bias can result in many things, much of which affects our workplaces as well as our personal lives. So discrimination is often the result of bias, and this contributes to poor decision-making, not only in healthcare, but everywhere. And bias can serve as an obstacle to our best intentions to promote diversity and inclusion. So what is bias? Bias is simply a tendency or an inclination that results in judgment without question. It's a mechanism of the brain that operates on associations. It's an automatic response. Our brains operate with shortcuts that allow us to quickly interpret and respond to the world around us. So bias is a decision that we make so quickly that it simply occurs to us as data, as if we've taken in data points, interpreted them, and made meaning out of them. And it all happens so fast that judgments such as he's charming or she's snobby simply appear as though they were facts. And what we're really doing is simply associating the new person with something or someone that we've experienced before and creating a judgment based on that. Though this is a normal human function, it often has consequences that are unintended. And some of our biases are conscious and we're aware of them, but most of our biases are unconscious to us. So what is unconscious bias? These are mental associations without awareness, intention, or control. Now, everybody has the intention to be inclusive, and yet when we look at our results, we don't always see the fruits of our labor. And why is that? Because unconscious biases often conflict with our conscious attitudes, behaviors, and intentions. And this explains the fact that even though we've consciously worked on increasing diversity and inclusion, we haven't been quite as successful as we hoped we would be. So why do we have bias? What possible function can bias serve? Our most primary purpose is to ensure our survival. Our identities are shaped by this desire to survive and, if possible, to thrive. And it makes sense that would be much more sensitized to danger than to attraction, because if you miss something positive, it's just a missed opportunity. And if you miss something dangerous, you could die. So part of this automatic survival tendency is to evaluate every circumstance, whether others are involved or not, as a friend or a foe. So a friend is someone like us, with whom we immediately feel comfortable. Foe is someone different than ourselves. So we have a natural tendency to feel more comfortable with people who are like us, whatever us is. Now, if you think back to our remote ancestors living in caves 25,000 years ago, someone was either part of the tribe or they weren't. And if they weren't, they were likely seen as a threat. So bias, therefore, became our internal danger detector, because without this, we wouldn't have lived long enough to reproduce. Those who did not perceive danger died. So we're all the result of this hard wiring in our brains. This natural tendency is still there. And we continue to very much live in an us versus them world. And if you want to test this out, think about who you're most drawn to or feel comfortable around at a public function or a place where everybody is a relative stranger, like a conference or a meeting. People are drawn to those who look or act similarly to themselves. And this is due to our bias towards friends as opposed to foes. Now, it's already been mentioned, but I just want to reiterate that research has shown us that health disparities exist across many chronic illnesses and conditions. And we've seen the numbers associated with the impact of COVID-19 on communities of color in more recent days. And we've long known that people of color receive fewer breast cancer screenings, fewer kidney transplants, fewer eye exams, fewer vaccinations, less revascularization procedures, less cardiac care, less pain medication, and less mental health treatment. So if you've ever taken a basic course in statistics, you'll know that the likelihood of all this being random is pretty low. And while the reasons for disparities are multifactorial, and I'm not suggesting that unconscious bias is the sole factor, it's clearly a contributing factor based on research that's been done and continues to be done on this subject. We do know, and I think Dr. Wright alluded to this a moment ago, that merely being present in a workshop like this has the capacity to reduce the impact of bias. And why is that? Because once you've heard this, you can't possibly make believe that you hadn't heard it. So even if you have absolutely no intention of changing behavior, there will be an impact. So we're going to do a little exercise now. I'm going to show you a series of pictures. And as you view each slide, watch your own thinking. Watch the assumptions you make about the individual who's in the picture, and they're all pictures of people. What do you find yourself thinking about them? Two particular assessments that I want you to keep in mind are this. Do these people seem warm to you? And do they seem competent? And I'm not just plucking this out of the air. This is based on research that's conducted and continues to be conducted up at Harvard by Amy Cuddy and her colleagues over the past 2 decades. And they've determined that the qualities of warmth and competence are actually what we mostly evaluate people on, no matter what we think we're evaluating them on. It's really warmth and competence. So do they seem warm? Do they seem competent? At what? Now, if you happen to know who these people are, keep it to yourself. Don't put it in the chat box. We're going to talk about each one of them individually. I just want you to look. So this is the first individual. So you're thinking of warmth, competence. What does he do for a living? Warmth, competence, warmth, competence. What are you looking at? And this one, warmth, competence. What do you think he might be doing for a living? So this is all of them together. So what patterns did you notice when you were looking at these pictures? You can answer in the chat box if you'd like. Do you tend to notice gender or apparent gender? How about facial expressions? Facial expressions are very important to human beings. We judge our safety based on the facial expressions of those we look at. How about clothing? If you notice clothing that people are wearing, ethnicity or apparent ethnicity. How about age? You know, I find that as I've gotten older, I start noticing age, but that's not universally interesting to people. Body type, body posture, or how about even where they seem to be, the setting? Everybody does tend to look at the same kinds of elements when they look at people. Probably, as I said, the most popular is facial expression because we make instant judgments based on that, and we'll see why as we go on. So let's look at these individuals, each one. So here's this gentleman. If you think that this gentleman seems warm and competent, or warm or competent, write it in the chat box, and I'll give you a minute to indicate what you think about him. If you have any idea what he might do for a living, you can put that in the chat box as well.
Dr. Stern, you're getting a lot of responses on what people are basing their decisions on: expressions, facial expressions, clothing, noticing they look warm. We're getting more responses here. Their smiles, facial expressions, ages.
So this gentleman, Michael, if you can tell me what you see in the chat box, how is he doing vis-a-vis warmth and competence?
Yeah, they're body language confident. They have here something not warm.
Not warm.
Seems like I should hear him speak and interact with him before I make judgments.
Oh, somebody's very advanced out there.
Different expression, biker gang.
Biker, yeah, biker. Anything else in the way of occupation?
I thought he might be okay until I saw Crips sprayed painted.
Crips, everybody knows the Crips are a gang, right? So let me tell you a little bit about this gentleman. This is actually John Fetterman. He's the current Lieutenant Governor of Pennsylvania. If you notice that tattoo on his arm, 15104, that's the zip code of Braddock. He's got a master's from Harvard, and the reason why anybody who's not from Pennsylvania might know who he is because he got literally international attention for taking the suburb of Braddock, which was economically extremely depressed, and kind of bringing it back. He tore down that sign and said no more gangs in Braddock. So if you're honest, and I know we're all honest out there, if you're honest, I'm pretty sure when you looked at the original picture, didn't come to mind, well, this guy looks like a politician from Harvard. Probably not. So here's the next individual. What do people think about warmth and competence for this person?
Warm. we're getting here. Nurturing,
We got a lot of warmth, nurturing,
looks very sweet,
looks very
religious,
sweet. And I'm
confident.
suggesting that probably people think she looks warm and nurturing, potentially due to her age and the expression on her face, correct? Anything about competence, any jobs or occupation?
No, I mean, both warm and competent, looks cold, strict,
Looks
politician
strict.
maybe,
Ooh,
Penny.
politician
Uh,
maybe. Well, if somebody
yeah,
wrote politician, this is actually Pratibha Patil. She was the first female president, not prime minister, president of India. She's a lawyer, she's an economist. Probably when you saw the first picture, except for somebody who said politician, probably being the president of one of the most populous countries in the world didn't come immediately to mind. Now here's this individual, warmth, and I kind of know what people are going to say even before they say it. We have a lot of
we're
warmth,
saying warmth. Yeah.
big smile.
Yeah. Uh,
Anybody suggest
Southern
what?
Belle, warm and competent.
Warm and competent. We like people who smile, right? So this is actually Dr. Mae Jemison. She's was a NASA shuttle astronaut. She's a physician. She's also an engineer. She was in the Peace Corps. Probably when you looked at the first picture, well, she looks like an astronaut to me, probably didn't come to mind. And finally, we have this gentleman, warm, competent,
Spiritual.
spiritual.
Yeah.
Anybody guess what spiritual tradition he might follow?
Religious, Sikh is the
Sikh.
question.
Whoever
Yeah.
said Sikh is correct. That is true. He is Sikh. So let me tell you a little bit about him. He is Guru Ganesha Khalsa. He's one of the world's leading experts in high-tech sales, the kind of person who gets 10,000 people in an arena and teaches them how to be sales sharks. So if you're honest, when you looked at the first picture, you probably didn't think of him as somebody who's teaching 10,000 people at a time how to be sales sharks, right? So there's one actual sentence that sums up all of these pictures. If anybody wants to put it into the chat box, I'll wait a second. One saying, one sentence that sums it up. Anything there, Michael? Well, I will tell you. You can't judge a book by its cover, and we shouldn't judge people either, but we do it all the time. All the time. We judge people based on how they appear to us, and we're usually wrong. I want to take a step back for a minute and mention microaggressions, which was alluded to before. Microaggressions is a term that you've probably heard about recently as it's come to general public attention, but it was actually introduced back in the 1970s by Professor Chester Pierce, who was a psychiatrist at Harvard, and he used it to describe what he recognized as the insults that were routinely inflicted on African Americans. So in the 1990s, Professor Derald Wing Sue, who's at Columbia University, enlarged on Professor Pierce's work and defined microaggressions as brief, everyday exchanges that send denigrating messages to certain individuals because of their group membership. And often, but not always, the person making the comment is unaware of the impact of their words. So if you've ever felt that you were on the receiving end of something that felt like a subtle prejudice or stereotyping, that was likely a microaggression. Derald Wing Sue also divided microaggressions into subtypes of micro-insults, micro-assaults, and micro-invalidations. Micro-assaults involve purposely discriminatory actions such as a verbal attack or hate crime, painting a swastika or hanging a noose. And micro-assaults imply violence, and it's a deliberate implication. Micro-invalidations commonly imply that a person is actually an alien in their own country, making them feel like perpetual foreigners. And micro insults are defined as nonverbal and verbal communications that convey rudeness and insensitivity subtly. And this is the most common form of microaggression. So I have a video I'd like you to watch now. I think everybody would agree that this is a very powerful video and brings to the fore much in the way of bias as well as microaggressions. I have one more film for you to see.
Folks are talking about how powerful that was, Penny.
Yes, and we're going to come back to it in a moment. I just want to show this one, if I can get it to go.
For people who still don't think that microaggressions are a problem,
Oh, you're so well spoken.
just imagine, instead of being a stupid comment, a microaggression is a mosquito bite.
Ugh, it's a compliment.
Mosquito bites and their itch are one of nature's most annoying features. But if you're only bitten every once in a while,
No, where are you really from?
Cleveland?
sure, it's annoying, but it's not that big a deal. The problem is that some people get bitten by mosquitoes a lot more than other people. I mean, a lot more. Whether it's on a date,
Oh, your English is so good.
Excuse me?
going grocery shopping,
You know, everything happens for a reason.
I'm just buying apples.
commuting to work,
So when are you gonna have a baby?
watching TV,
We have to keep the Redskins name. It's part of our culture and history.
or just walking down the street with your partner.
I couldn't even tell you were gay.
Mosquitoes seem to pop up everywhere.
Do you know John? Give me shopping advice. I have Cher too.
And getting bit by mosquitoes every damn day,
Can I touch your hair?
multiple times a day,
So pretty. Can I touch
touch
your
it,
hair?
please? Can I please?
is annoying. And makes you want to go ballistic on those mosquitoes, which seems like a huge overreaction to people who only get bit every once in a while.
It's just a mosquito bite. Who cares? Just another angry black woman.
Of course, beyond just being annoying, some mosquitoes carry truly threatening diseases that can mess up your life for years.
Astrophysics? Maybe you should try this challenging major.
Ow, my dreams.
And other mosquitoes carry strains that can even kill you.
He looked like he was up to trouble, okay? I felt threatened.
So next time you think someone's overreacting, just remember, some people experience mosquito bites all the time.
You're all so exotic. Wow.
And by mosquito bites, we mean microaggressions.
So Michael, can you share some of the comments from the chat box relating to these two videos?
Yeah, people are talking about how powerful this was. Both videos were, Penny. People are looking for the links. They sharing some of their experiences. one person talks about, to be honest, I think it's a natural instinct to judge people. While unjust judging can be destructive and negatively impactful, just judging can save your life in some instances. Example, judging someone that looks highly suspicious while holding a weapon near you. Do you agree? I want to know your thoughts. So truthful, the stuff that happens. People are just, echoing, this was great, very powerful. Yeah, so all impactful comments.
And I think we could
Sir.
actually do an entire session on these two videos alone, because they both are extremely powerful, and they do, in visual form, explain a lot of what we're talking about today. And these are in the public domain, so if you want to share them with people, they are out there. The first video is, I believe you can find it in YouTube under the name Justice, and the mosquito one you can also find if you look up microaggressions. And you mentioned somebody's comment about that it's natural if you see somebody holding a weapon. That is part of our internal danger detector. Mm-hmm. And it is a natural, wiring of our brains to recognize that as danger and to run. But we are usually overly sensitive in these days and see things where there are not things to be seen. So I'm going to talk about a few more things and then leave you with some guidance as to what you can do with all this. And I'm going to start by telling you that our backgrounds create the lenses through which we see the world. And these lenses are culture, group, individual, and institutional. And culture means the culture you grew up in or a part of, not necessarily just ethnic culture, but also geography, family, values, the way you communicate, your orientation to time, the way you collaborate, the way you tolerate change. There are many elements to culture. Group, gender, ethnicity, generation. I'm a baby boomer, I'm a millennial, I'm a Gen X, etc. Or socioeconomic group, middle class, upper class, 1%, 5%. All of us belong to a number of different social groups, and you can't tell the group that anybody belongs to just by looking at them. Individual is our individual identity, like personality. And I want to mention that every single person on this planet is totally, irrevocably, completely unique. And even if you happen to be an identical twin out there, you're still not exactly alike. Identical twins, for example, don't have the same fingerprints. So even if they cloned you, you wouldn't be exactly alike because they haven't gone through your life experiences. So every individual is infinitely precious, like an endangered species. And imagine if we treated everybody in that way, the way we do the spotted owl. And then finally, institutional refers to the institutions you're a part of, like religious institutions, schools, universities, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, the military, and so forth. The point of this is that we see the world not as it is, but as we are. And I want you to think about that for a second. We all think that what we're seeing around us is the way that everybody is seeing it. And that's not true. We see everything through our own unique lenses, and everybody sees something different based on their own unique perspectives. So I want to talk a tiny bit about the unconscious mind, since we are talking about unconscious bias, and tell you about the fast brain. Some of you may know that the majority of our brains are designed for fast thinking. It's the fast brain that allows us to quickly process people and circumstances and translate this into reaction. So the function of the fast brain is critical for our survival, but also causes us to rely on our emotions and our biases much more than if we would slow down our thinking. So our slow brain, our thinking brain, our seat of reason and judgment lives in the prefrontal neocortex, which is the red part of this slide. Information processing is slower in this part of the brain, and that's where awareness and consciousness are. And if we look at our own thinking, and this is a skill that only humans have, to be able to think about our own thinking, we call this metacognition. And metacognition allows us to become aware of our biases and change direction if we notice that these biases aren't serving us or our relationships. So instead of our biases making the decisions and running the show when you rely on your fast brain, metacognition helps us practice more conscious awareness in everyday functioning. So think of it this way. The fast brain is like if you have an older sibling, the older sibling of the slow brain, and you know the older sibling usually gets its way, but we have to let the slower brain take control more often. So I have a little exercise here that was first done in the 1930s by a psychologist named John Ridley Stroop, and you can experience a little bit of the difference between the fast brain and the slow brain. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you colors, and I want you to shout out the colors as you see them, and it's very fast. So shout them out as quickly as you can. Michael and Dr. Merez, if you want to shout out the colors so people can hear it, that would be great. Okay, so here we go.
Go ahead, yeah. Green, blue, green, orange, yellow, yellow, red, blue, orange, green, orange, red, blue, red, yellow.
Okay, a little slow, but we're going to do it again. And I want you to yell out the colors as quickly as you can. Here we go.
Red.
Well,
green.
This was harder because the letters formed a word that indicated a different color than the colors of the letters themselves. So if you're literate in English, and they've done this in a million languages and it always works, you're likely to make mistakes if you try to go fast enough. And this is because your fast brain gets confused, which causes one of two things. Either you give the wrong answer or you have to slow down in order to get it right. And that takes longer to process information. So you see how the fast brain and slow brain work. So there's about 11 million pieces of information at any one time that's around us in the environment. And through our perceptions, our interpretations, our preferences, selective attention, we absorb about 40 to 50 pieces. And I talked about how our background is similar to lenses that shade the world in a certain way. So what you're seeing actually at the end of the day is only a partial view. We see what we expect to see, we see what's of interest to us, we see what we're specifically looking for rather than everything that's in front of us. So we can overlook people, we can overlook information, we can overlook risk, we can overlook opportunities for no other reason than our own perspectives. And our biases are one form of these perspectives. So understanding our own backgrounds, identities, and biases can help us be more aware of what we're missing. So this is yet another motivation for increasing diversity and inclusion. So there is more variety in viewpoints, which can help us see more than a single person or a homogeneous group can see on its own. This is just a cartoon illustration of the number of relationships that people have to negotiate and sustain. And it's easy to see how you can inadvertently step on people's toes, because unless you know people well, we're likely to make assumptions that who they are, the groups they belong to, and this is all based on the way we see the world. So how do we practice conscious awareness? So these are 6 ways to mitigate your biases. The first, recognize and accept that you have bias. Develop the capacity to use a flashlight on yourself. Practice constructive uncertainty. Explore awkwardness and discomfort. Engage with people you consider others and get feedback. What does this mean? Well, recognizing and accepting that you have bias is the hardest of all. To be human is to be biased. And when you realize where your biases come from, you realize that they're not based in a rational reality. We just see they're rather a social or emotional construct created somewhere in our pasts. The capacity to shine a flashlight on yourself, take an honest, non-judgmental look at who you are, how you are, who you are. Which messages and biases govern your everyday life? Practice constructive uncertainty means changing your exclamation points to question marks when it comes to the truths and the assumptions you have about yourself and others. Explore awkwardness and discomfort. It's okay to feel outside your comfort zone sometimes, unsure of what to say, what to feel, what to do. So explore why you feel that way and whether it relates to something you've said or done. Engage with people you consider others. This has been found to be one of the most powerful ways to soften negative biases. Develop a multidimensional, diverse view of other people, and soon you'll see that there really are no others and that we're all in this together. And finally, getting feedback. Invite other people to help you see what might be your biases. Don't ask people, am I biased? Am I a racist? That's perceived as a loaded question, and people will rarely be honest with you. But rather, is there something that I've missed, which could be a friendly invitation for them to fill you in on your blind spots, what you're missing in your interactions with others or with your behavior. Rollo May is an existential psychologist, and he coined the phrase, freedom is the pause between stimulus and response. So when you're truly free, you don't have to respond in a knee-jerk fashion to everything that comes your way. So check your reactions by taking the time to pause, especially when you see yourself having a strong or emotional response to a situation, or when you see someone else having a strong response to a situation, or when you have to make a decision quickly based on limited data. So what are you going to do with all this today? Well, based on what we've discussed, use this information to improve your relationship with a coworker, a friend, or a family member. Come up with an idea for recognizing, navigating, and or mitigating biases in your life. Identify one situation in which you commit to mitigating your bias. And I have one last video for you.
Yeah, and Dr. Stern, I think we're over time here. So I think we should send this out with the slides and just allow people the opportunity to kind of reflect on this on their own time. But I want to...
It's the last thing. Are you sure you don't want them just to see it?
Okay, let's go with it. If the team is good.
As heavy metal. I'm the band I started with friends.
He's got long hair, but at work he ties it in a ponytail. Probably piercings.
I read a lot of books. I read cognitive psychology, behavioral science. I've spoken at TED Talks.
Really? Wow.
You look nerdy. Like you think you're cool, but you're still a nerd. أكثر شيء مركز عليها التراث الإماراتي واللغة العربية.
And I also think he's wearing a condor.
Yeah, even I felt that, yeah.
أنا وايد أحب الطبخ. دائما يعني معظم وقتي أطبخ في المطبخ. طبعا يعني في المطبخ.
He is mature, like he's like cheddar cheese.
You mean basically معفن. Extreme sports athlete. I skydive and pretty high risk activity for sure.
Because your actions speak louder than words, right? Yeah.
God, dude, that's awesome.
لا هوني surprise.
It was amazing when the lights came on and you get to realize who you're actually conversing with.
واستغربت أول شيء لأن أول شيء فتحت الليتات الحمراء وما رحت بس أشوف واحد جالس قدامي وكلها تاتوز على وجهه.
This was my expectation of you. This is what you really are.
فشفت شخص مثل هذا طريق ما بعد تكلم وياه. You guys should be swapped. I didn't expect that.
The rocker was someone who I wouldn't expect to be, you know, a heavy metal musician.
I should have these tattoos, not you, man.
Change.
الشاب اللي قبالي براسي كنت راسم صورة إنه هو راح يكون عربي كتير شكله. That's how you know.
When I saw Garrett on a wheelchair, I was completely taken aback. Hey, man, come on.
لما جت العلبة فتحته ما مكتوب عليه شيء ما مكتوب عليه كوكاكولا.
And the minute I turned around, I saw that
labels أو الشعار أو المغلف أو التصميم هو بس للعلب مش للناس.
ترى واضحة. يعني المفروض ما تحكم على الواحد بالشكل.
الشخص مو بلازم يعني ننتقده بشكله، لكن أول شيء نتعرف عليه عقب نقدر نقول كيف الشخص.
It changes your mind, your perspective, your heart.
So thank you very much for your attention and sorry for going over. I encourage all of you to work together to mitigate your biases.
Yeah, this was awesome, Dr. Stern. Thank you very much. I want to thank you all for your terrific engagement, sharing your perspectives, insights, experiences. There was a whack of chat we could spend a lot more time on. But as Penny mentioned, we could go deep on all of these, but I just want to give a heartfelt thanks to the team who organized this and for the invitation to be part of this journey with you all. We greatly appreciate it.
Thank you guys so much.